Well, hello everybody, and welcome to season 2, episode 7 on a bitter cold drive to Dayton today, even though Roth says it is sunshine and shorts in the Queen City. It is not that here in Central Ohio. Roth, I'm glad to see that you are not frozen down there, and it does look like the sun is shining.
Yeah, the sun's shining on me coming down here in beautiful Cincinnati, Ohio. I was hoping to cross the river tonight and go to a game in Kentucky, but both games that I had circled on my calendar unfortunately canceled. So gonna be an indoor night. Maybe get some poker action going with some friends and figure it out. But yeah.
Well, I'm glad to see you survived another flying to the hoop. You will, the viewers out there, you will probably recognize that there's only two of us tonight. TJ apparently was gifted a couple of tickets to the Cleveland Cavaliers tonight, so don't blame him for checking that out.
Now that we lost half our listeners, we'll continue.
They're like, well, TJ's not on there. We'll check out now. And I don't do a good enough job at this. We would be much appreciative if you are listening on YouTube, if you subscribe, like the episode. If you were listening on iTunes, same thing. Give us a 5-star review, whatever, comment. Whatever they say, it does help the show. Again, we don't obviously do this for financial gains, but I would be remiss if I didn't say, hey, we'd love for you to subscribe to our channel. That way you never miss a show, because there are times where I'll drop a show, 10-minute show throughout the week, which I plan on doing this week to cover Division 3. That'll be coming probably closer to the weekend, but hoping to do that. So yeah, subscribe to the channel and definitely like the show. Our viewership is going up over the last couple of weeks. I think people are starting to, you still got the NFL going on, which is strictly a weekend thing. But I think a lot of people, this is when a lot of the casuals start to, enter the conversation of basketball, and I think we're going to see our viewership continue to climb as we make our way to Dayton there in March. So let's get it rolling here. Our introductory question, this thing was a huge hit as far as the interaction that went on with this on Twitter, and it was basically worded it like, what coach would you take to win a game if you had, like, knowing that you have the second most talent on the floor? And there was an overwhelming answer to this question on Twitter from lots of people. I was hoping to get, I knew the one name was going to come up for sure. But I was hoping that there was going to be more variety, just to kind of, because we don't see every nook and cranny of the state of Ohio. I mean, you guys see a ton, but there's some places that go relatively unseen a lot, and just was hoping to hear from some of those people. But Roth and I are going to give you our coach that we would take if we were taking the floor with the second most talented team, and we had to win the game. So Roth, I will start with you. And when I saw you type this into the document, I was like, man, yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, I went with Coach Schlabach of Berlin Highland. You just look at his consistency in March, finds a way to win, and he's had a couple pretty talented teams over the years that made it down to the Final Four, but he's also brought a couple teams that had no business making it to the Final Four. He just does a great job. They schedule tough games in the non-conference. and they just have a system that works from all the way down to like their youth programs as well. All the kids seem to buy into the program culture, and I just think that Berlin Highland wins year in and year out, whether they are talented or not. So I went with Coach Schleybaugh. Honorable mention to Coach Greg Richards out of Mason, former coach who is retired. He would be a name who, from like 2017 to 2020, potentially would have been my answer to this question. Tons of names you could list out there, but I went with the Berlin Highland man.
Yeah, I think Roth, I think like this would be a great question to ask like some of the teams that win a lot of games, like the coaches from those teams, like, you know, who do you hate to play against? That maybe not like a team that is always in the top 10 or whatever, but I think it'd be interesting to ask some of the coaches. You know, the thing with Schleybaugh is definitely you look at them, and when they're not a team that when you watch them in the warm-ups, you're going to be like, wow, definitely can see why this team is here. But then you start playing, and it's like, you know, before you know it, it's mid-second quarter, and it's a tie game, or they're up by 3, and they just defend the heck out of you. They don't make a whole lot of mistakes. And really, like, the only time they lose is when the talent is far superior. And it has been, and that's how they've lost at the state tournament. But you look, like in 2022, they had no business beating Malvern. No business beating that team with Michael Miner and Johnny Browning. I know they had Malvern had another 1,000-point scorer on that team. I think his name was Hutchinson or Trent.
And then the 2 seniors they got this year were probably sophomores.
Yeah, Barino, who's a really, really nice player, and they got Mitchell.
And younger Miner.
Yeah, but I mean, just that game right there. Last year, you know, they're getting drilled by Northside Christian in the regional. Storm back and win that. District final last year, I think they got down like 21-3 to start the game to River. Come back and win that game. You know, you can say what you want about Schleybaugh, but they just win, man. They just win and win a lot of games that they probably shouldn't. But you hit the nail on the head. They schedule some really tough games in tough environments, and you know, we'll probably talk a little bit later about a game they got coming up this weekend that is going to be a really good game. For me, man, I grabbed the low-hanging fruit, Roth. I did. Probably because I see this guy a lot. Unfortunately, I see him 2 times a year. That's too many. Jeff Quackenbush of Newark, and a lot of people use the phrase the quack factor on Twitter. And, you know, this guy, like, you could almost pencil him in for the district final, like, almost every year. They find a way to get there. I was looking and thinking, you know, in 2012, when Pick Central won their first state championship with Karis LeVert and Jay Sean Tate and those guys, Newark was the last team to beat them. I mean, basically ran them out of the gym at Newark. And that was a 2-loss Central team. And then you look again, 2022, Pick Central, state champs again. Guess who beats them? Newark at Pick Central early in the season. But still, both state championship teams here at Pick Central, Newark got them both of those years. And they do this regularly. I mean, you do this. I mean, you look at Reynoldsburg's roster, Newark's roster. I mean, Newark beats them, right? The other night they've already beat Pick Central. They beat Pick North. And it's like the same thing every year with them. It's different names. And when he has a stud, they're really, really good. Greg Avery back in 08, they win the state title. They were really good in 17 with BJ Dooling. It just so happened that Pick Central was really, really good that year. But, yeah, Jeff Quackenbush is my answer to the question. But I also wrote down David Sheldon at Colonel Crawford. I was
thinking his name as well.
I think he does a great job, man. Year in and year out, both the Sheldon brothers, and they get it honest. Their dad was a really good coach too. But David Sheldon and Colonel Crawford would have been my honorable mention. And as you said, there is a ton of really good coaches out there. And I don't want to, we could only list one or two. So just know that we know that there's a lot of you out there. All right, let's hop into the recap here. Mike, you were at the Flying to the Hoop, but there was, you had the battle in the 6-1-4, which I think had some pretty good games, that came down to the wire. But the Flying to the Hoop is for I think 21 years now, has been the centerpiece in Ohio around Martin Luther King weekend. And Eric Horseman has done a good job over the years of reinventing the event. There's been years where he's been heavy prep school. I know you and I both would love to see more like powerhouse public schools from the Midwest coming in there, TJ as well. But I just think that, that event is great no matter what, but it's really good when the Dayton teams are really good. So Mike, what was your overall takeaways this weekend down there at Kettering?
Yeah, so we'll start off on Saturday. Dayton Dunbar got a win over Walnut Ridge in a Columbus versus Dayton City League battle. Eric Brewer Jr. was really, really impressive that game. And then later that night, while the Browns season was coming to an end, another Cleveland team had a lot more success against a team down south, and that is Lutheran East and Garfield Heights. Both of them get wins over top high school programs from Louisiana and Texas. Jesse McCullough continues to show why he is the favorite for Mr. Basketball. He goes against a high 4-star or 5-star, depending on where you look, 2025 big from Isidore Newman. And then for Garfield Heights, Marcus Johnson with an incredible performance, one of the best individual performances I've seen all season in an overtime victory over Faith Family Academy out of Texas. They've been multiple time state champions, both Faith Family and Isidore Newman over the past 5 years. So 2 very quality wins for the Cleveland teams. Nice that Ohio beat Texas, especially after what happened on the gridiron this weekend. And then to wrap up the night, we had a Florida powerhouse, Westminster Academy. They got up huge on Kettering Alter, but then Alter storms back. It seems like they barely missed a shot in the second half. It was an impressive game for a variety of players on Kettering Alter. I'd like to specifically highlight Brady Connor, who was pretty impressive with his passing ability, can handle the ball well for his size at the point guard position. And also Gavin Lean hit a bunch of big time shots, picked his spots well for Kettering Alter, and just brought senior leadership to a team that got down almost 20 points at halftime. And Westminster Academy was sweating that entire fourth quarter. They eventually escaped with a 2-point win, and it was an incredible game. You thought maybe the Dayton school would be able to pull off the upset, but their last second shot fell off. On Sunday, one of the early games of the day was Cincinnati Woodward versus Beaver Creek. Both these teams got up and down the floor. Very rare you see both teams score 75 points in a high school game these days. I thought for Woodward, Dante Farrell shot the ball at an extremely high level from 3-point range. But for Beaver Creek, Isaiah Williams was named to the Flying to the Hoop All Tournament team. His athleticism from the guard spot really shines, able to get into the paint, an impressive transition athlete, really looking to slash and get downhill, can finish with a floater, can finish off of 1 feet or 2 feet in the lane. Beaver Creek also had a couple wings or forwards who impressed me as well. One of them was a senior who is committed to Villanova for track, and that is Liam Gluck. And then finally, another player I want to shout out for Beaver Creek was Caden Ellerby, the 6'5" junior forward, scored 22 points, was 9 for 11 from the field, had 6 rebounds and 4 steals. His stats have been consistent across the board: 13.6 points, 5.3 rebounds, and 2 steals per game. He's a big-time jumper, had an alley-oop slam that was set up by Isaiah Williams at the buzzer. I think that Beaver Creek really impressed us on Sunday. Lutheran West, we'll mention them later. They just keep finding ways to win. It was an ugly game against Huber Heights Wayne the whole way, but they get it done. And then later in the night, St. Ignatius, they had Oak Ridge out of Florida on the ropes after St. Ignatius had an overtime victory over Centerville the night prior. St. Ignatius falls to Oak Ridge out of Florida. It was a back and forth game. Eventually, Ignatius just didn't have the horsepower to win a second straight game. Looked like they got a little tired in the fourth quarter. They had the lead and let it slip away. And then to wrap up the night, Centerville got a bounce back overtime win over Isidore Newman. This was a game the Elks had to have. Jonathan Powell, the Xavier commit, hits a bunch of huge shots. I thought Centerville, especially Eli Greenberg, did a great job of finding Powell in his shooting pockets, and he was shot ready whenever he caught the ball. And Isidore Newman just gave him too much time and space over and over again, and Powell made them pay. He's a kid who steps up on the big stage when the lights shine bright. He had big playoff games when he was just a freshman at Dayton Chaminade Julian. He had a huge game at Flying to the Hoop last year when he was at Centerville. Steps up again. I wouldn't be surprised if Powell has a big playoff game for the Elks as they try to get back to Dayton for a 3rd straight season. That leads us into Monday. Monday started off as Preble Shawnee falls from the ranks of the unbeatens. Then Pickerington North and St. X, another overtime game at Flying to the Hoop. We had a bunch of extra basketball this weekend. Arness Lawson continued his impressive junior season. Looks more in control than he was as a sophomore, making better decisions driving to the basket. Is a rhythm shooter, not an off-the-catch shooter, but his calling card is his athleticism. One of the most explosive guards in the state, one of the top defensive guards in Ohio as well. And then for Cincinnati St. Xavier, I want to give credit to them because pretty much every player that got heavy minutes on their roster, besides Walikowski and Wassler, the two 2025 prospects, they're all D1 football kids. And I'm sure a lot of them could not play basketball, not show up, not do anything in the winter and just lift weights. And a lot of these kids are out here competing. It seemed like every time I saw a kid make a few plays, I'd look him up. Oh, this kid has a Kentucky football offer. This kid has a Boston College football offer. This kid has a Ball State football offer. It just didn't really matter, especially the younger kids, too. The two sophomores that they had are big-time football recruits as well. So just want to give credit that they're a program that could easily be starting a completely different lineup because a bunch of those kids don't have to play basketball if they don't want to, but they're having a great season thanks to their football program. Then Richmond Heights, this is another team that needed a win. You know, Richmond Heights has traveled so far. They looked a little worn down at times this season, have lost to a couple Ohio schools already this year. They go out and they really took it to Westminster Academy. I thought TJ Crumble played his best game of the 5 games I've caught of Richmond Heights in person this year. Dorian Jones, after a very rough first half, comes out in the second half, hits a bunch of big shots. His defensive effort is never questioned by me. And then De'Eric Barber found his shooters. He also hit a couple shots. And then thankfully, we had a scary moment near the end of this game. Mike McWilliams took a charge for Richmond Heights, and he had to be taken out on a stretcher to the hospital. But luckily, he was discharged later that night and has returned to Cleveland. So prayers up to him and his family. Hopefully he's able to make a full recovery here, as it was a scary moment in the gym. But on the hardwood, Richmond Heights gets a big win that they really needed, and that might be a springboard to jumpstart the rest of their season. Finally, last two games, Reynoldsburg loses a heartbreaker in overtime to Oak Ridge. They had it and just couldn't get it done in the end. I thought Jordan Fisher and Jordan Bowens were both terrific for Reynoldsburg. Fisher is a very natural scorer. He just has the ability to put the ball in the bucket, whether that's driving, getting all the way to the rim, mid-range pull-ups, different crossover moves, creating for himself. Can also score in transition. And then Jordan Bowens is a kid who just continues to improve. You know, his freshman year, I thought he was a bit of an undersized center at 6'6". This year, as a sophomore, he's doing more ball handling. He's attacking the basket, but what hasn't changed is his motor. He goes 100 miles an hour whenever he's attacking. Had a couple left-handed finishes at the rim, and just looked more confident with the ball in his hands. I think the next step in his game will be distributing once he's drawing help side defense due to his dribbling ability and athleticism. But Bowens is a big-time stock riser for me in Ohio's 2026 class. Want to give credit to him. And then finally, Sycamore versus the host, Kettering Fairmont. Raleigh Burgess was really impressive. He had like 4 or 5 dunks that were highlight reel plays. The Purdue commit is a prime example of a kid who you have to watch him in multiple settings to truly understand his game. With Indiana Elite, he played strictly power forward next to Flory Badunga, one of the top big men in the country who controls the paint. You see Raleigh stand at the three-point line, and he made decisions as a passer, took a lot of three-pointers, spaced the floor for Indiana Elite, and this is one of the top grassroots teams in the country, regardless of shoe circuit. That Indiana Elite 2024 squad was big time. And then you watch him with his high school team. He's playing more in the post, back to the basket, still getting double teamed and showing that passing ability. But he's a great example of seeing kids in multiple settings. And then for the host, Kettering Fairmont, I was impressed with junior Evan Gentile. He can just really make plays happen, has an old school game, high field player, big time shooter. No surprise that he's having a big junior season, and he looks like a kid that regional small college programs are really going to like watching this spring and summer at the grassroots level, and also in June with Kettering Fairmont. So that's a wrap from Trent Arena. A busy weekend, and you mentioned there were a couple other events going on across Ohio this weekend, including the battle in the 614 and also the Fort Loramie MLK Classic. So I will kick it out to you in the corner, Stubbs.
Yeah, I'm open. They always say there's a reason you're open. The 614 Ohio Dominican, a ton of games. What I'll do here, Roth, is I'm just going to give the scores of these games by the day, and then just kind of see if there's anything that piques our curiosity. So day one of this event, you had Olentangy Berlin beat Columbus Academy 52-46. That's a Division I against a 3. A really good game. Marion Harding 59, Indian Valley 51. Bishop Watterson 54, Marysville 43. That surprised me a bit. I thought Marysville would win that game. Olentangy Orange 45, Grove City 43. This game really surprised me as far as the final outcome. Afrocentric 64, Westerville South 53. That's a big time win for Mike Bates' team. And then a really under the radar squad is River Valley. They beat Bishop Reedy 65-63 to close out day one of the Battle of the 614. Roth, Orange and Grove City 45-43. Grove City is a team that I don't think a lot of people are going to want to play in March in the Central District.
No, we had them at Midwest Live in June, and they were impressive. You talk about a big like Craig Gilbert and a point guard like Kevin Gallagher. Sometimes that's all it takes. If you can control the ball, not turn it over, you have a big man that you can throw, give him the ball in the post, throw a lob to him. He can control the glass. And you have a guard like Gallagher who can make plays off the bounce. They have decent size on the wing as well. And really, they have 3-4 players in their starting lineup who can hit a three-pointer. They have a lot of the pieces that you would look for in a potential upset team in the playoffs. It would not shock me if they make it to a district final and upset a higher-seeded team in front of them at all. I thought they were not really even a sleeper coming into this year because they were a team I kind of expected to do this. This doesn't surprise me one bit.
Yeah, and we'll talk a little bit more about Afrocentric here in a bit when we get into the players and teams of the week. Day two, we had Ironton come up and beat Bexley 61-43. Westerville Central handled Dayton Belmont 74-53. Newark 51, Austintown Fitch 45. Westerville North 60, Kettering Alder 43. Akron Hoban beats Hilliard Bradley 48-47. And in the nightcap, Gahanna hangs on to beat previously undefeated Lexington 56-46. Couple things that stand out to me here, Roth. One, I like this event because it's like you have a lot of teams that don't really know each other. Like a lot of like
Newark and Austintown Fish would have never guessed.
Just different matchups that are cool. You know, the Westerville North Alter game did not surprise me after the energy that Alter had to spend to get back in that game just less than 24 hours before playing a very, very talented, guard-oriented Westerville North team. So that didn't surprise me. Hoban is up and down. This was a real nice win. Coming down. They've
been more up since Kenny Scott has come back.
Yes. This is a good win. Bradley, appeared to be trending in the right direction. So I still think they're going to be there when the dust settles.
2-point loss to Olentangy Orange, 1 point loss to Akron Hoban. They're not a team anybody should be writing off.
No, they're going to be there. And then, I like this game for Lexington. Gets them out of the Ohio Cardinal Conference there for a minute. Come down and play Gahanna. Good game. Gahanna picks up the win. So pretty good second day there at the 614. The final day, you have Maysville over Northridge. North Union beats Fairbanks. Johnstown beats Sheridan. New Albany, who I saw on Friday night, beats Heath. Who else? Pickerington Central plays their third game in 4 nights. They beat Parkersburg South. And then Hartley closes the day out with a 60-52 win over Tays Valley. The final day didn't have a ton of things that I was extremely interested in. Obviously, I was curious at what Pick Central would do. They played New Albany. Game could have went either way. Friday night, they beat Lima Senior in a real close game at Flying to the Hoop. And then they come back and get a Parkersburg South team that I believe has like 1 win on the season. But if you look at the competition they've played, it's been pretty good. And then
they maybe played the toughest schedule in all West Virginia.
Yeah.
I looked at their losses because I watched them in person.
Yeah, at Harvest
and I was
Prep,
like,
right?
this is probably like a top 10 team in West Virginia. I looked at the record and I was like, oh my God. But
Yep.
I mean, they really only have 2 games that they kind of gave away against average West Virginia comp. All their other losses are to either solid Ohio teams or the best of the best out of West Virginia. So I think that they are a sleeper in West Virginia if teams don't take them seriously in the playoffs.
Yeah, another team, Bishop Hartley is under Andreas James is having a real nice season, which I fully expected in year 2 of his regime there with the Hawks. Maysville got a win. If you haven't seen the Bob kid from Maysville, he can really score the basketball as well. North Union's having a real nice season, and they beat Fairbanks. So, and then New Albany beat Heath. And New Albany, that's another team that I really like. I really like the guard play with them. And, I got a question for you later. We'll talk more about Central Ohio, especially Division I. So I'll save that. Real quickly on the MLK Classic, couple games that obviously stood out to me. Russia in their game, just absolutely smacked a good Antwerp team, beat them by 30. I've said this multiple weeks. Russia is not playing around. They aren't just beating people. I mean, they had a close game to start the season. I think it was like an 8-point game against Jackson Center, but then they played them in the rematch this past week and smacked them pretty good. But this is a team that, Troy Christian, I think they beat them by 25 or 26. Troy Christian's probably one of the 5 or 6 best teams in D4. And then Antwerp was undefeated coming to this game, beat them by 30. I said this, and I fully believe it. I know that we are giving Richmond Heights the trophy. I get that. Like, you'd be stupid to not put your money on them, hypothetically. But don't tell Russia. Do not tell Russia that. I promise you that they are not going to go lightly. If anybody was at that game last year, for 3 quarters, Russia gave them everything they wanted. And that crowd from Russia was electric. And they will be again if they let's be honest, it's hard to get back. Unless you just have elite talent. It is really hard to get back to the Final Four. So I don't want to say we're penciling them in. But if they do, they are not going to go lightly. I can promise you that.
They had a handful of tough games on their road last year. The Jackson Center game was, pick 'em.
Yeah. Yep. 3rd time they played. Tri-Village gets a nice win over Marion Local. Marion Local is still a team that's trying to figure it out, man. They're trying to figure it out on the fly.
And somehow they seem to always, be in it in the regional semis in March. I don't know how they do it, but they're always a slow starting team.
Yep.
Takes them a while to get going.
Yeah, so I like the Toledo Christian handled Minster pretty easily. That's another team in D4 to keep an eye on. That TAC with Toledo Christian, Emmanuel Christian, and Maumee Valley Country Day is really, really good. Even Cardinal Stritch and Ottawa Hills are not bad teams by any means. So that's a really good conference. So that kind of wraps up the recap. There are some things I wanted to mention, and I feel like I should have been doing this throughout the season. Some people players and coaches that hit milestones this past week. So we definitely want to recognize those things. So from a player standpoint, Mason Shrout, the kid you got to see at the Flying to the Hoop, he hit his 2,000th point. He is the first player in Preble County to do that. Braden Schreck, a junior from Ironton, scored his 1,000th. St. Clairsville's Colt Thoburn hit his 1,000th point. It's kind of a tongue twister. Will Donahoe from Urbana, only the 8th player in school history to go over 1,000. Dakota Johnson at Crestwood does it as well. And Dom Akins, Walnut Ridge, goes over 1,000 as well. From the coach's side, Roger Jury from Hopewell Loudon hits 350. He took Cardington Lincoln to the Final Four in '96. He was also at Marion Harding for a while. Hopewell Loudon, since Jury got there in 2015, that's a program that's won a ton of games under the radar up that way. And that I think they're in that Sandusky Bay, one of those Sandusky Bay conferences. I think they're in the one with Old Fort. Dave Close at Stowe, 600 wins. I mean, Dave Stowe was in the Final Four with Stowe in 1990 and 93. I believe they were also nationally ranked in 93 at Stowe. He's been doing this for a long time. Jason Vermillion at Arlington with his 400th. David Dennis, Harvest Prep, 400. Rick Hairston from Glen Oak with his 300. Mark Kinsley, that's another guy I thought about with the coach thing. At Green with 400. Larry Taylor at Tuskegee Central Catholic with 400. And then just another game I wanted to mention before we move forward. Emmanuel Christian knocks off Maumee Valley Country Day, 71-63 in overtime. That's a game Jalen Brown and Nate Miles combined for 46 points. CJ Majors led MVCD with 25. Amani Dickerson with 13. That game got a little dicey, I think, at the end from a spectator standpoint, but not to take away from the game. A really nice win from Division III Emmanuel Christian. So that wraps up our week recap. Roth, let's quickly slide into our players and team of the week. Go ahead and just give me your player and team of the week so we can, and then I'll do the same.
My player of the week is Cortez Freeman from Afrocentric. He averaged over 30 points per game in 4 games. The Nubians go 3-1 with a neutral court upset win over Westerville South last week. So Cortez Freeman is my player of the week. And then my team of the week, I'm going with the Tri-Valley Scotties. They beat Upper Arlington on an Eric Neal 3-pointer with just a couple seconds left, and also beat their rival Sheridan last week. Scotties are 7-0 in conference play. Their only 2 losses are to Hilliard Bradley and Columbus DeSales. They have a big game this Friday against New Lexington.
Yeah, those are 2 great picks. Cortez Freeman, obviously a big reason that Afrocentric is starting to peak at the right time. Obviously a dangerous team under Coach Mike Bates. Tri-Valley, the thing I like about Todd McLaughlin, who I go way back with, back to when he was coaching at West Muskingum. I love that even though they bumped down to Division II, he kept that schedule that he knew he had to play to be at least competitive when they were in the Division I Central District. And he's still playing that schedule. And, when you look at who they play, and they're in the D2 East District, and you look at the other teams in the D2 East District and who they're playing, not to slight any of those teams, but Tri-Valley's playing Upper Arlington last night. Other teams in the D2 East District were not playing Upper Arlington last night. And, I know a lot of teams in that district do not want any part of being in their part of the bracket, and rightfully so.
I think their season came to an end last year against New Lexington, so that'll be interesting in a rematch this year. Actually, it was Fairfield Union.
Fairfield, yeah. Yep.
Who got them.
So for me, my player of the week was Brooks Lockhuff from Wayne Trace. I believe he's an Ohio Dominican kid. He's going to Ohio Dominican. I was really happy for Brooks. Wayne Trace coming down to a big marquee event like Flying to the Hoop, and he showed out. 29 points, 13 of 21 from the field in a win over Miami East. Wayne Trace now 11-1, 6 consecutive wins. Division III, look out for the Raiders. My team of the week, I was kind of like, there was a couple teams I thought about, but it was really hard to pass up Delphi St. John's going to Lima Central Catholic and beating the unbeaten T-Birds 58-53, and then they beat Fort Recovery as well. Delphi St. John's 10-2 on the year, another one of those teams in that really, really deep Northwest Ohio Division 4. So those are our players and teams of the week. Now, Roth, what should people be watching for this week?
Oh, well, there's a handful of big-time events going on this weekend, starting off in Columbus on Saturday. I believe TJ will be here. It's the Jared Sullinger Play-by-Play Classic. Starts off Pickerington Central versus Afrocentric. The game won't have the same firepower it has had when it was Devon Royal versus Dayton Swain, but still should be a fun battle. Then Olentangy Liberty plays against Amani Christian. If you haven't seen these teams yet, you probably haven't been to many events, but host Reynoldsburg takes on Garfield Heights. Should be a good game, even though I'm poking fun at how many events these teams play in. Then Walnut Ridge takes on unbeaten Olentangy Orange. That'll be an interesting game. Walnut Ridge really needs a signature win. And then Westerville North takes on the defending D2 state champ Akron Buchtel. So we'll see if Westerville North can add another impressive win. On Sunday up in Cleveland, we got the Chet Mason Invitational. The Western Reserve Academy takes on Fort Erie Prep out of Canada. The St. Ed's plays Spire. That's a game I'm pretty interested in seeing what the results of that one is. Lutheran East takes on Glenville. We'll see if Lutheran East just uses their size to overwhelm Glenville. But Glenville has some athleticism, a couple football kids, and then their guards are very quick. Then at 4:15, Warrensville Heights takes on Shaker Heights. Warrensville Heights is sleeper in Northeast Ohio D2. They play a tough schedule, might be a little underseeded come playoff time. Then Garfield Heights takes on Cleveland Heights, just a classic Northeast Ohio rivalry. And then the nightcap host Brush takes on Akron St. Vincent St. Mary. Brush is a team I've only caught, I think, once this year, but they have a variety of prospects that are ready for the college level. Ellie King and Amari Dammons are the notable ones for Chet Mason's group. And then this is where I plan to be both days at Smithville High School. The battle at the Berkey, we start off Wadsworth against Bishop Watterson. When I caught Max Bosley earlier in the year, he had like 40 points. So maybe he'll be able to do it again. I think Bishop Watterson, a little tougher defensively, more organized, probably going to be a lower scoring game. And they've been inconsistent this year, but have a couple nice wins to Bishop Watterson. Then you got Triway versus Indian Lake. Dalton versus Toledo Christian. You mentioned Toledo Christian earlier. They're a team I'm pretty interested in. Berlin Highland takes on Wayne Trace. I just caught Wayne Trace. This will be the first time catching Berlin Highland this year. Unbeaten Norwayne takes on Division I Olentangy. And then host Smithville wraps up the night against Tri Village. Then on Sunday, Chippewa takes on Cardinal Mooney. Glen Oak takes on North Farmington, one of the top teams from Michigan. Menard takes on Cincinnati Moeller, so it'll be kind of funny, me being from Cincinnati, traveling all the way up to Smithville to watch Cincinnati Moeller. But that should be the game with the most talent we see all weekend. Lake Catholic takes on Harvest Prep, battle of Division III private schools. The best team that will be taking part in the event all weekend by far are the Fairview Warriors. They are going to be taking on Johnstown Northridge. Head coach Ryan Berry, by far the best coach that anybody will see at that event all weekend. And he coached the best player that any of the coaches have ever coached at that event in myself, Michael Roth. So Carl Kramer, I know you coached a couple NBA guys, but Coach Berry coached me for 3 years. So that is the penultimate game of the event, Fairview versus Johnstown Northridge. Northridge actually has a big-time senior Carter Mallern, who I want to shout out. And then finally, Malvern taking on Akron East. Really excited to see unbeaten Malvern. And that heads into the final thing on my what to watch board. Remaining unbeatens. In Division 1, we have Garfield Heights, Olentangy Orange, and Findlay. In Division 2, we have Lutheran West, Cincinnati, Wyoming, Creston, Norway. In Division 3, we have Malvern, Archbold, Ashland, Crestview. And in Division 4, we have Russia, Pandora, Gilboa, Leesburg, Fairfield, and Monroe Central. Stubbs, buy or sell. There will be at least 3 unbeaten teams heading into the playoffs in all divisions combined. We currently have 13. So will at least 3 of them make it to 22-0?
Okay. So who were the Division 1? Garfield Heights, Olentangy Orange, Findlay, and there was one more.
That's it.
Division 1, there was 3.
Yep.
Okay, so I would be surprised if any of those 3 are undefeated.
You're at maybe a half out of that group.
Just for the sure fact that those teams are going to be playing really good competition. And in Division 2, what do we got in Division 2?
Lutheran West, Cincinnati, Wyoming, and Creston, Norway. I think Wyoming is personally the best bet here.
Yeah, and I haven't dissected Norway's schedule, but guessing that they probably are going to have a shot. I don't know what they got in the out of conference left. So all right, and then what do we got in 3? Ashland,
Division 3, we
Ashland,
have Malvern, Ashland, Crestview, and Archbold.
Okay. All right. I was looking at Ashland Crestview's schedule today. I do like them to potentially go undefeated.
And then in D4, you got Russia, Pandora, Gilboa, Leesburg, Fairfield, and Monroe Central. I believe Leesburg, Fairfield had been undefeated or 21-1 like 2-3 years ago.
Yeah, I know they got North Adams, which will be a tough game. Russia, I know Russia's got a couple of tough. I know they've got Marion Local late in the season. Monroe Central will have
Russia got their conference play too.
Yeah, they'll have a chance. Monroe will have a chance. And then who was the other D4 you mentioned?
Pandora, Gilboa.
Okay.
So at least 3.
So you're saying at least 3.
Yeah, so you can get 3, 4, 5, whatever.
I will buy that. I will buy it.
Right.
I'll buy at least 3.
There we go.
But I will say that it's not going to come from any of those D1 teams.
All right.
So
you got 3 out of the 10. D2, D3.
Yeah, I need 3 out of those 10 to get it done for me. I'm Wyoming. I'm pretty confident, not sold. Ashland Crestview, same.
Russia,
yeah. Pandora Gilboa. Trying to think. I know they got a game. Who they got coming up? They got Delphi St. John's coming up. So, yeah, I'm gonna say it's 3. I don't know which 3 it's gonna be, but like I said, it's not gonna come from Division 1. Those 3 are all gonna lose a game somewhere. So. Yeah, good question, Roth.
And that wraps up my what to watch.
Okay. Yeah, before we move to the games of the week, that battle at the Berkey, man, they've done a really good job of increasing the talent level in the matchups each year. When it first started, it was they got 1, maybe 2 games that, I'm kind of interested in. But man, you look at especially Sunday. I mean, you got Glen Oak and North Farmington. That Menor Moeller game. I'm intrigued by the tempo of that game.
I think Moeller will run with them.
That would be fun, man. That would be fun because Krasancik's gonna, what they're gonna do.
It's tougher just to to slow the game down against a team like that. It's like when Trotwood played Hilliard Bradley.
Yeah.
And Hilliard Bradley was happy to run with them. The only reason they lost was Trotwood shot, no exaggeration, Trotwood shot like 67% from three that game, and they took like 25.
Yeah.
It's going to be tough to lose no matter who you play if you shoot 25 3-pointers and make 65% of them.
Yeah, it's Saturday at that event, I think Tri-Way Indian Lakes got a chance to be good. Highland Wayne Trace is the centerpiece for me on Saturday. Norwayne, you said Olentangy, right? They play Olentangy.
Yep.
I think that game was originally supposed to be Northside Christian, but we know Northside Christian didn't end up what they were going to be. So yeah, that'll be interesting. Norway and Olentangy. Olentangy plays a lot of interesting games. All right, Roth, what do you got for me for your games of the week? Who are you penciling in?
On Thursday night, Marion Harding plays Shelby. That's a game in sort of north central Ohio. That's kind of got my attention. Then on Friday, Olentangy Orange takes on Olentangy Liberty. Orange, I guess they're on upset alert as an unbeaten team, but this is a city rivalry that Liberty will have Tyler Kropp in the paint. Tough matchup for Orange. And then Delaware Hayes takes on Big Walnut. Big Walnut, after a slow start to the season, I was really high on them preseason. I thought maybe they were going to be disappointing. They have won, I believe, 10 of their last 11 and are playing great basketball. So they could give Delaware Hayes a scare. Big Walnut's at home. I think that's a big-time game on Friday night. So those are my three.
Yeah, Big Walnut, man. I'm glad you put that game. They have definitely turned the corner. Jamie Pearson at Marion Harding has done a really nice job of making the Presidents, I believe that's their nickname, quite relevant. So that should be a good game at Shelby on the 18th. For me, Delphi St. John's at Pandora Gilboa. That game is on Saturday night. Pandora plays Arlington, which is a BVC game the night before. So, Arlington is always tough. Coach Vermillion just got his 400th win. So that's a sneaky trap game there for Pandora Gilboa right before they play or host Delphi St. John's. Toledo Christian at Emmanuel Christian on Friday night. That should be really good. Wayne Trace at Highland on Saturday. I mentioned that game. That'll be at Smithville. Richmond Heights at Akron St. V. That is a Friday night game. A little Southeast Ohio flavor for you. Minford at Wheelersburg on the 19th. I think, Minford is playing very well. I believe the only loss they have is to D1 New Albany. So that's going to be a tough game at the Berg. And then Lima Senior at Ottawa Glandorf on Saturday night. OG has 2 losses this year, and both, Lima Central Catholic, they lost by 2. And then at Findlay, who's undefeated D1, lost by 2. They need to get one of these games. And Saturday night against Lima Senior at home would be a good opportunity to get a big win for Tyson McLaughlin and the Titans. All right, so those are my games of the week. Roth, I got a couple of buy and sells for you here. One, I'm just going to start with this one. Buy or sell, I was too hard on Beaver Creek last week. You saw them at the flying of the hoop now. Buy or sell, I was too hard on Beaver Creek last week when I saw that they had a first place vote in the AP poll.
I am going to sell. I don't think you were too hard on Beaver Creek because the fact that they were voted first is ludicrous because they had a 30-point loss to Centerville. However, I did watch them, and they play a fun style of game. They get up and down. That's probably why their loss was so bad, because they want to run. They want to play fast with you. Isaiah Williams is having a big year. They've got decent size, and their kids are skilled. They didn't turn the ball over against a Woodward team that really puts a lot of pressure on you. I was impressed with them. However, voting them first is completely absurd. So I'll sell.
All right. I appreciate that. All right, here's one for you. Sonny Johnson and the Garfield Heights Bulldogs have been the most impressive team this season in the state of Ohio.
I'm gonna buy it. I think that they're sitting unbeaten. You have victories over Huntington Prep, over Western Reserve Academy, over Richmond Heights, over Faith Family Academy out of Texas, who is just a normal high school, even though they have that academy sort of slogan on them. I think that when you look at the clutch wins that they've had and their ability to schedule up and remain unbeaten, they have the best wins out of any unbeaten, and it's not very close. So I am buying that Garfield Heights has been the most impressive team in Ohio so far. And there's a handful of teams that are close, but I think Garfield is like half a step above the rest of the pack.
I thought you would go that route. At some point, we had to get to that point with Garfield Heights. They just keep winning.
Yeah.
And they're beating good teams. There's probably a lot of people. Sonny has been to the state before, and he's had some good teams down there. He's had some good teams that didn't make it to the state. But probably, he's never had a player like his son. And I know he's going to.
I didn't get to really see Marion Jackson or like a couple of the other, like Frankie Hughes.
Those guys were good. They were good. They were really good. But Marcus is a sophomore and he's doing this on the big stage. It's just so impressive. And shout out to the Johnson family. They get, if you don't know them, you may get a misunderstanding, but they are beautiful people, man. The Johnson family is great. They are.
Sonny is a tremendous people person.
Yeah, and they're guys like that are great for the game. They are.
Yeah.
They
draw attention, draw crowds.
You cannot, like, you could have an impression of Sonny, and then spend 5 minutes with him. There's no chance that after 5 minutes of just shooting the breeze with him, that you're going to be like, man, I can't stand that guy. Like, it's just not going to happen. He's going to have a smoothie in his hand. He's just so one of a kind. He's unique, man. A great guy. And just a typical guy. Like, you need those kind of characters in the game of basketball. They're good for the game. They just are, man. Last one here, because I'm getting at something here. 7 divisions, which apparently is what is being pushed out to the athletic directors per multiple sources. 7 divisions is bad for the game of Ohio high school basketball.
Buy. Big time buy for me. I think that in a majority of the divisions, we can look at Martin RPI's tweet of like the top 25 teams in each of the 7 projected divisions.
Which was really cool. That was
yes.
Cool, man.
In a majority of the divisions, there's very little depth outside of the top 6 or 7 teams.
Yeah.
Division 1 still has the depth up to like the top 20 teams. Division 2, I only thought there were like 8 teams that were really worth a lot. Divisions 3 through 6 were, I think, the worst in terms of quality depth compared to the school size. Cool. And then I actually thought Division 7 had a decent amount of depth, funny enough. I think that 7 is tremendous overkill. If you want to split up Division 1 somehow, you can do that and go to 5. If you want to add an open division that your Richmond Heights, Lutheran East, Harvest Preps, smaller schools who continually dominate, if they would want to join that division, that's potentially an option. I think 7 is ridiculous because at the end of the day, you looked at the Martin RPI website, Richmond Heights is still going to be in Division 6, and that doesn't really solve anything for the Division 4 teams that can't beat them. Now the Division 6 teams won't be able to beat them. Lutheran East is still in Division 5. Shocker, if we went to 7 divisions, the Division 5 state championship is probably Lutheran East versus Ottawa Glendale.
Yep. Nothing
really changed there. You just went from calling it the Division 3 title to the Division 5 title. I think that for 90% of teams, the playoff system is fair. There's only a couple teams that make it unfair. I think if you're a very, very small Division 1 school, I guess you have somewhat of a complaint against some of the really, really big public and private schools. I would hear you out. And then the D3 and D4 teams that lose to Harvest that lose to Lutheran East and Richmond Heights, I would hear you out. But for everybody else, I think the system currently set up is just fine. I think 4 divisions is fine. I think that district titles are going to be plenty of blowouts outside of Division 1. You won't get, and then you also won't get competitive games as we head into like the state Final Four, because those top 3 to 4 teams per division are going to be so much better than the 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th team in their division. So I don't buy this at all. If what I expect to happen does happen, maybe we go back to the drawing board after a year or two and reverse it. That would be the hope right now. And it seems like not a strong consensus agrees with me, but at least a majority of people agree with me. And the people who just flat out say separate public and private just could not be more wrong. Public schools recruit too. I hate to break it to you. Whoever people think that all the public schools are these innocent, oh, poor me, we're a public school. No, you're wrong. They recruit just as much and do just as many shady things to get kids into their school and to get players on their team. And me and TJ talked about probably 50 transfers this year, and I would doubt that more than half went to private schools. I would bet more than half of them were going to other public schools. Now, obviously, a majority of the state are public schools, so that's not surprising. But separating public and private is complete and utter nonsense to me. It's a non-starter. The only one that you could even remotely think about is Division 1 football, where Eds, Moeller, St. X, if you want to say those teams play by a little different rules than the rest, I would kind of hear it out, but that's it. Not for basketball, no way.
Yeah, I'm definitely with you when it comes to the public-private thing. I've always said that it doesn't have to do with public versus private. It has everything to do to location for access to players. Whether you're a public or a private, if your school is located around a major metropolitan, you're going to have access to players. If you're in a rural school, whether you're public or private, I mean, you're not going to have access to the type of players they do in the metropolitan areas. And I know how this works. I mean, you know how it works. You get some of these players that are disgruntled at maybe a Division One or Division Two school, and they bump down to one of these D3, D4 schools, and they're an all-state caliber player, and schools in the rural areas just can't do that. They just don't have the access to players. But to sum this up, I know that every team's realistic goal is not winning a state championship, but after looking at Martin RPI's hypothetical breakdown of the 7 division field would look like, I have little doubt that this will just be more opportunities for the regulars to win state titles. It just is, because now you're going to space them out, and they're going to, instead of being runner up or not making the state in Division X, they're going to get slid into this division, and they're going to win this one now because that other team they couldn't beat is in another division. And you hit the nail on the head with the depth, because the OHSAA loves regional equity. They want at the state, they want a team from the Northeast, they want a team from the South, wherever. So when you try to do that regional equity, when you don't have the depth, you can see
you're going to send a really bad team from the East or Southeast or the Northeast.
Look at all you have to do is look at football. Marion Local's toughest games in football are typically getting out of the region, because once they get out of the region, it's blowout city. They get in that state final against somebody from another part of the state.
Newark Catholic. I covered Newark Catholic that whole year. We kind of joked about sending our reporters to the state. We were like, what's the point?
Yeah, I mean, it's just, and that's what's going to happen. When you look, you were right. Division 7, I counted 8 or 9 teams in that top 12 that are really good. But there's a common theme.
Or what they are.
Yeah, there's a common theme. A lot of those teams are from the northwest part of the state of Ohio, or that far western part of the state of Ohio. They're not, most of those teams aren't coming from the other parts of the state. But again, we could have a whole episode on this, and people would absolutely eat it up because they love this. They love the public-private conversation. But before we finish up here with our alumni section, I do want to get to a couple of questions here. Jake Brock at Jake_Brock49. He's one of our loyal followers. So shout out to our guy, Jake. He said, in Division 1, which region out of the 4 will be the toughest? Obviously, Cleveland has some schools that'll go to Region 1. Roth, to me, because there's so much, I don't think the state champion is going to come from this region, but I do think Central Ohio's parity is going to make it really tough for whomever is coming out of there. There's a lot of teams that we could make a case for to get to the Final Four in Central Ohio.
Yeah. The Central District is going to have what I think is the most depth. I think when you look at it from a 1 to 20 perspective, the Central Ohio has the best depth. However, if you're talking about a pure bracket sense, I actually think that it is probably going to be the Northeast District that stays Northeast, because you're the one team that wins the region from Central Ohio. They're only going to have to beat one team per round. So a bunch of the tough teams, the depth is going to eat itself out in Central Ohio. So I think that the more elite talent that's in Northeast Ohio will make Northeast Ohio's district championship, regional semi, and regional championship a little harder than the Central District. However, the Central District will have the toughest district semis. That is a no doubt. That region, their district semis will be big time. But once you get past that, it sort of flatlines. And then I think the Northeast keeps getting tougher, which with each round,
Yeah.
you see a step up in comp.
Yeah, that may for sure. But yeah, again, shout out to Jake for the question. He's always got some good replies and good thought provoking stuff on Twitter. So appreciate the follow, man.
And his Falcons are doing better this year.
Yeah, and then our
FEG.
guy Matt Gould, the great Matt Gould from Cleveland.com. Nobody does it better, man. Nobody works harder in the quote-unquote newspaper business. I don't even know if you call it that anymore. But
website.
Yeah, website. He said, am I alone in thinking free throw shooting has been worse with the move to 5 team fouls per quarter for double bonus? We talk about a shot clock impact, how a shot clock could impact the game. What about this? My mind says subtle, but I've noticed the Nick Anderson effect a few times. You've been to a ton of games, Roth. Do you see this impacting the game?
A little bit, definitely. I think that sometimes it's easier to get into the bonus almost than it used to be.
Yeah.
But I mean, 1-and-1s, they were a part of basketball. They're obviously not anymore. I think it adds a little extra pressure on the shooter. I don't think it's a dramatic change to my eyes in terms of free throws attempted, the amount of them, how officials are calling the game. If there is a change, it is marginal. I'm not saying it's not there. I don't know. We could go back to how we had it before this year, and I wouldn't really bat an eye or say, oh, great job or horrible job.
All right, and finally, so thanks again to our guy Matt for the question. Finally, our guy Ben Swinnerton. Now, listen, Ben over the years has given me a hard time, but I love Ben. Ben is a great follow. He always questions my thinking. I do remember, I think it was this year, I believe I said something about possibly getting a 2-loss team in the college football playoff, and he quickly shot that down, and he was right. There was no 2-win playoff team, so kudos to you, Ben. But always appreciate him. He always has good questions and good stuff. So he wants to we're not giving you the answer to this, by the way, Ben. He says, how do you have so much box score knowledge? Are coaches sending you box scores? Or are you getting them from somewhere, especially Northwest Ohio and Southeast Ohio? The drive to Dayton will never tell their secrets. Do you have anything?
Stubbs, you gotta answer for your crimes.
Yeah.
I can tell him where I find all my Southwest Ohio stats. It's on the conference pages.
Yeah, I'm sure he's knowing him. I'm sure he knows the Southwest. But again, thanks for playing along with us, especially without our guy TJ here. Our bell cow is going to a Cavs game tonight and leaving us on the road by ourselves. But we will finish with our alumni spotlight. So Roth, I'll let you take it.
My Division I Alumni Spotlight Player of the Week is Jemiah Neal from Toledo St. Francis. He's at Arizona State, and last week averaged 16.5 points, 6 rebounds, and 2.5 steals per game versus Colorado and Washington. They play UCLA at home tonight of this recording. It would have happened last night when this gets posted. Jemiah is a kid who was a super athlete and had a bunch of mid-major offers and interest, went prep for, I believe it was his senior season, and really blew up. Didn't take long for him out on the West Coast to gain that Pac-12 offer from Arizona State. And he's had a nice career out there. Arizona State has a handful of Ohio prospects on their team, including Sean Phillips and Alonzo Gaffney alongside Jemiah Neal. And then my small college player of the week for the Alumni Spotlight is Luke Rawlinson from Collins Western Reserve. He's at Cornerstone University. He had 3 straight 20-plus point scoring games, shooting above 50% from the field in 3 WHAC wins. So congratulations to Jemiah Neal and Luke Rawlinson, my Alumni Spotlight Players of the Week.
And I will go with Division One. I'm going to go with Devontae Blanton at Eastern Kentucky. He, in a pair of wins over Central Arkansas and North Alabama, he combined for 24 points, 13 rebounds, and 8 assists. He's averaging 13.6, 5.5 rebounds, and 3 assists per game. Eastern Kentucky is 4-0 in the A-Sun. Definitely a team to look out for. Devontae Blanton, always a kid that impacted winning, comes from a really, really good program up at Ed's. Only thing I will say about Blanton is, man, I just wish that those guys would have got a shot in 2020 because I really think that they had.
Them versus Moeller.
Yeah, I really think they had a chance to win it with those seniors that they had that year that had been, they had played a lot of basketball.
One of Blanton's assistant coaches at Eastern Kentucky is a former St. Edward Eagle, Coach Steve Lepore. Their motto is the most exciting 40 minutes in sports is Eastern Kentucky basketball. They are near the top in steals and points in the country, play a great brand of basketball. So for the worthy of the jersey guys, got to give that shout out to St. Ed's here on the podcast, doing it at the college level as well.
Timmy Smith and Eric Flannery, baby. Lakewood St. Ed's, Steve Lepore. Man, I could go on about those guys, about those teams. My small school guy, Jarian Mayo, at Lakeland Community College. Shout out to a JUCO team and player, former Lima senior kid. He scored 21 points in a 94-90 win over Lorraine Community College. He's averaging 19.4 points, 6.5 rebounds, 2.5 assists, and they are 11-1 and number 10 in the country in Division II JUCO. So, wanted to give a little love to the JUCOs this week, and so Devontae Blanton.
Lakeland runs a great program.
Yeah. So appreciate. Wanted to give some appreciation to the JUCO ranks. So those are our Alumni Spotlight Players of the Week. Big school, small school. Roth, it's been a great show. Be looking forward to having our partner in crime back next week. Any parting shots?
Nope.
All right. So for Mike Roth, the great Mike Roth of Prep Hoops Ohio, I'm Kurt Stubbs, saying so long from the drive to Dayton.